I, Gerald R. Ford, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
the
office of President of the United States
the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend
the
Constitution of the United States. So help me God. Congratulations, Mr. President.
With those words spoken by George Washington and each of his successors, Gerald Rudolph Ford today became the 38th President of the United States. And as he repeated the phrases after Chief Justice Burger, Mr. Ford's hand rested on a Bible owned by his son, a theology student, open to a passage of Proverbs. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart.
From CBS News headquarters in Washington, this is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. And in Washington, Eric Severide, Phil Jones, Dan Rather, Fred Graham, Terry Drinkwater at El Toro Marine Base, California, and David Culhane in New York.
Good evening. Truth is the glue which holds governments and civilizations together. President Ford said as he took office today that, and he pledged an administration of openness and candor. Our long national nightmare is over, Mr. Ford said. Our Constitution works. Our great republic is a government of laws and not of men. More on the new President's Day from Phil Jones.
Early this morning, Ford departed his modest home, still carrying his own briefcase, and admitting for the first time that his shoulders were beginning to feel the weight of the presidency. And later in the morning, Ford felt the sorrow of waving goodbye to President Nixon, a friend for the past 25 years. He fought back tears as he stood on the South Lawn watching the departure. He had said earlier, Watergate was the most tragic incident he has ever witnessed. And about 2 hours later in the East Room, where Mr. Nixon had said goodbye to his staff, Gerald Ford was taking the presidential oath. He declared an end to the nightmare of Watergate.
I am acutely aware that you have not elected me as your president by your ballots. So I ask you to confirm me as your president with your prayers. I have not campaigned either for the presidency or the vice presidency. I have not subscribed to any partisan platform. I am indebted to no man, and only to one woman, my dear wife. As I begin this very difficult job, even though this is late in an election year, there is no way we can go forward except together, and no way anybody can win except by serving the people's urgent needs. To the peoples and the governments of all friendly nations, and I hope that could encompass the whole world, I pledge an uninterrupted and sincere search for peace. As we bind up the internal wounds of Watergate, more painful and more poisonous than those of foreign wars, let us restore the golden rule to our political process, and let brotherly love purge our hearts of suspicion and of hate. In the beginning, I asked you to pray for me. Before closing, I ask again your prayers for Richard Nixon and for his family. May our former president, who brought peace to millions, find it for himself.
The Ford children and guests watched as the new president and first lady departed. And moments later, Mr. Ford, in contrast to his predecessor, was working on warm relations with the White House press corps.
I do look forward to working with you. We will have, I trust, the kind of rapport and friendship as we've had in the past, and I don't ask you to treat me any better than I would expect in reverse.
Later, a briefing by Jerry Terhorst, Ford's new press secretary. No sound cameras were allowed. There were these announcements. The Nixon cabinet and Chief of Staff Alexander Haig have agreed to stay on. Selection of a vice president is uppermost on President Ford's mind, but it will be a week to 10 days before a decision is made. And while confusion reigned at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, back home in Alexandria, with the exception of a few television crews, tranquility was returning. Some Secret Service agents were still around, and some neighbors watched the ceremonies on television. Others hoped the Fords wouldn't forget them.
And went directly across the street.
Waves to you and shakes your hand and says hello.
Think you'll ever get to visit the White House now that he's president?
Maybe if I'm lucky.
But 514 Crownview Drive will have the Fords back to sleep tonight, and it may be after this weekend before the White House is ready for the new occupants. Phil Jones, CBS News, Washington.
President Ford took office 2 hours after Richard Nixon departed from the White House, leaving behind a letter of resignation to be submitted while he was airborne for San Clemente. The unprecedented letter said simply, "I hereby resign the office of President of the United States." Dan Rather reports.
The president, who has always prided himself on self-discipline while at the center of power, wept at times today as he gave it up. But not as he and his family entered and left the East Room where he wept. They all smiled bravely to thunderous applause from staff and the cabinet. He began his talk with a jab at the press. He praised his late father as a great man and his late mother as a saint. And he talked of mistakes.
Sure, we've done some things wrong in this administration. And the top man always takes the responsibility, and I've never ducked it. But I want to say one thing we can be proud of. 5.5 years. No man or no woman came into this administration and left it with more of this world's goods than when he came in. No man or no woman ever profited at the public expense or the public till. And so I say to you on this occasion, we leave proud of the people who have stood by us and worked for us and served this country. We want you to be proud of what you've done. We want you to continue to serve in government if that is your wish. Always give your best. Never get discouraged. Never be petty. Always remember, others may hate you, but those who hate you don't win unless you hate them. And then you destroy yourself.
It was when he talked about his parents that he cried.
Well, I guess all of you would say this about your mother. My mother was a saint. We leave with high hopes, in good spirit, and with deep humility, and with very much gratefulness in our hearts.
He waved his trademark double V arm signal from the helicopter on the South Lawn. Then it was on to Andrews Air Force Base in suburban Maryland. Mr. Nixon refused to say goodbye today, saying au revoir instead, emphasizing to all that he intends to remain active politically and, as he put it, fight for what I believe. Dan Rather, CBS News, Washington.
It was Richard Nixon, private citizen, who came home to California. A good crowd, 3,000 or more, some military, but mostly from Orange County, where Nixon's support has always been strong. It was a welcome by those who were with him to the end and still are. Just like he was still president, one lady said. Nixon responded to the faithful, promising he will continue to be active in public life.
Having completed one task does not mean that we now just sit in this marvelous California sun and do nothing. I can assure you that I am going to continue to work for peace among all nations. I'm going to continue to work for opportunity and understanding among our people here in America. And I am going to continue, and we are all going to continue, to be very proud of the fact that we, like you, are Californians and that we're home again. Thank you.
From here, as he has done so often in happier times, Richard Nixon went by helicopter to San Clemente. His estate, no longer, of course, the Western White House. Now it's to be known by the name he gave it, Casa Pacifica, Peaceful House. Terry Drinkwater, CBS News, El Toro Marine Base, California.
CBS News will have a special report on the day's events, including President Ford's full acceptance speech, beginning at 11:30, 10:30 Central Time tonight.
1928, motor oil was dispensed from bottles. No protection against contamination, no assurance of quality. 1933, Kendall introduces the first oil sold nationally in cans, assuring quality from refinery to crankcase. Today, when engines run hotter, Kendall motor oils are engineered to protect your engine against heat, engineered to exceed today's longer drain intervals. Do your engine a favor. Get Kendall motor oil, a Whitco product.
That's our breakfast?
My common sense.
Make breakfast count.
How?
We'll get 10 vitamins and iron. Won't worry about them all day.
Thrilling.
Vitamins can be fun. Kellogg's Product 19, the 4-grain cereal, gives us 100% of the U.S. recommended daily allowance for 10 vitamins and iron.
100%?
Try. Being smart tastes good.
Listen to your common sense. Start breakfast with Product 19.
On Capitol Hill, the steam seems to have gone out of the movement to put Congress on record in favor of immunity for Mr. Nixon from Watergate criminal prosecution. And as Nixon left the White House, the new administration insisted that Watergate went with him. Fred Graham reports.
White House officials said that before he left office, President Nixon did not sign pardons for himself or any other Watergate figures. When President Ford's new press secretary was asked if Mr. Ford would pardon Richard Nixon, he referred reporters to Mr. Ford's earlier statement that the public would not stand for such a move. The Watergate Special Prosecutor's Office is stunned and upset to find that the politicians have apparently washed their hands of the immunity question, leaving Leon Jaworski to decide whether to indict Richard Nixon. The word is that Jaworski has not made even a tentative decision and will not for several weeks. Mr. Nixon left behind his famous tapes. White House lawyers are undecided whether they belong to him or the government. Special Counsel James St. Clair and most of his staff will remain on the White House payroll only long enough to clear up Mr. Nixon's loose ends. Then they'll start looking for jobs because, as one White House official put it, there's no more Watergate here. Fred Graham, CBS News, Washington.
Incidentally, the new White House press secretary, Jerry Terhorst, said President Ford will not tape White House conversations. John Connally appeared in federal court in Washington today and pleaded innocent of charges that he took $10,000 as bribes for higher milk price supports while serving as Nixon's Treasury Secretary. Connally faces a maximum 19 years in prison if convicted. I'm a Ford, not a Lincoln, the new president of the United States once said. And when friends describe President Ford, they don't say charisma, but they do say believability, sincerity, nice guy. Gerald Ford began life in Omaha, Nebraska, 61 years ago. A look at the new president by David Culhane.
Gerald Ford Jr. started out as Leslie King Jr. His mother never told him she divorced Leslie King Sr. and married Gerald Ford, a Grand Rapids paint maker, or that Ford adopted the baby and gave him his name. He surely had a middle American childhood, with the neighbors' kids and dogs, fishing in Lake Michigan, an Eagle Scout in 2 years, playing championship football in high school. One day, Leslie King Sr. showed up and said, "I'm your father." It was a hell of a shock, Ford said, but he chose to remain a Ford. At the University of Michigan, he was the first-string center for the championship Wolverines in the senior year. In 1948, he married Elizabeth Bloomer, a model and Martha Graham dancer. By now, he'd been through Yale Law School and World War II in the Navy. He was campaigning for his first term in Congress, a campaign that made him late for his own wedding. Jerry and Betty had 4 children, Michael, John, Stephen, and Susan. The Fords owned 3 houses in Virginia, in Grand Rapids, and a skiing condominium in Vail, Colorado, all mortgage-free. His net worth, $250,000. Like so many Americans, he was a cold warrior caught a bit short by President Nixon's fast-blooming romance with Russia and China. But he gradually came around to support détente. When it came to money, Ford made the conservatives happy, the liberals unhappy. He wanted protection on trade, less foreign aid. He voted against the minimum wage bill his first year in Congress, and again in 1960, 1966, and 1973. He voted against public housing and rent subsidies, against federal aid to secondary schools, and for aid to universities. He voted against Medicare and the rat extermination bill. He voted against money for mass transit, model cities, and urban renewal. He voted against creating the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and he voted against the war on poverty. As for labor, the AFL-CIO figures Ford voted wrong most of the time. He voted to keep right to work in the Taft-Hartley law, and he voted against workmen's compensation for migrant workers. And there were all those votes against minimum wage bills. He did vote for training for the unemployed. His record on civil rights is more liberal than his reputation. The NAACP says he wound up voting for a lot of civil rights bills that he tried all along to defeat, but couldn't. Here's the record. Ford voted for open housing in 1968, for the Voting Rights Acts of 1965 and 1969, for outlawing the poll tax, for the Civil Rights Acts of 1960 and 64, and against busing. In 25 years in the House of Representatives, Ford was a Republican and a regular. But occasionally he did strike out on his own, as when he wanted to impeach the liberal Supreme Court Justice William Douglas. Douglas wrote an article for the radical Evergreen Review justifying rebellion by the young. Ford didn't like it at all. But the House did not impeach, and Douglas stayed on. The main thing that came out of it was Ford's definition of an impeachable offense. He said it was whatever a majority of the House considers it to be. And when the impeachment of Richard Nixon came up, Ford stuck by that definition, saying the proceedings were necessary to clear the air. As vice president, Ford traveled more than 100,000 miles around the country in the last 8 months, saying that the whole truth about Watergate should come out, but insisting that there was no evidence that Richard Nixon was guilty of an impeachable offense.
I don't happen to believe, on the basis of evidence that I am familiar with, I think I'm familiar with most of it, believe that the president was in any way connected with Watergate per se, and I don't believe that he had any part in the cover-up, but time will tell.
After Richard Nixon admitted Monday that he had ordered a halt to the Watergate investigation shortly after the break-in, Vice President Ford declined any further public discussion of impeachment. Until today, President Ford said, clearly in reference to Watergate, "Our long national nightmare is over." David Culhane, CBS News, New York.
Foreign reaction to Nixon's resignation varied, but there were widespread expressions of relief that Secretary of State Kissinger will stay on. From China and the Soviet Union, there was no official comment, but Moscow's government paper, Izvestia, expressed confidence détente would continue. In the Middle East, Arab leaders expressed fear and alarm that improving Arab-American relations might wane. Egyptian newspapers bordered their resignation stories in black. Israel felt it had lost a friend. Danish Prime Minister Hartling called the resignation a great day for America, a great day for democracy. In his commentary, Eric Sevareid explores the challenges confronting President Ford and the personal qualities with which he will meet them.
The day Harry Truman left the presidency, he went home to independence, and the first thing he did, he later explained in an immortally American line, was to take the suitcases up to the attic. On this day, when Gerald Ford entered the presidency, the first thing he did was to cook his own breakfast as always. There has to be a certain kinship of the spirit between a man who leaves world fame and carries his suitcases to the attic and a man who encounters world fame and fries his own bacon as his family sleeps. We can't know if Ford will be another Truman in action. The challenges are different. Truman's task was to put a shattered Western civilization together again and throw up dikes to protect free societies overseas. Mr. Ford's task will be to preserve all that. But he has to begin at home. He has 11 long years of a kind of political anarchy to overcome, 11 years of acrimony, doubt, and mistrust. And he began with the right words at noon today: truth, candor, simplicity. It all seemed to be there in his plain, open features, in his plain speech. He seems to know instinctively that he does not have to contrive public relations stratagems for himself, fabricate images, play calculated roles. His predecessor was only tough. Ford seems genuinely strong in the sense of self-confidence. He knows who he is and who he is not. He does not require enemies to give him his sense of identity. It is extraordinary how it all comes down to the character of one man. Our vast, complex institutions of law and government can protect us as they have just done, but they cannot lead the people. This immense and various society always requires a man, one man. We have no king, no Delphic oracle, no Platonic academy of the all-wise. What we have is the President of the United States. One man's character will be the key to what happens with us, as one man's character was the key to what has been happening. Long ago, Mr. Nixon's internal mechanism was set to self-destruct. And for the last 2 years, he has been listening to it ticking away, paralyzed, not strong enough to stop it with a clean breast of everything which might have prevented this final explosion. To this moment, he does not admit guilt, only a few mistakes. And at this moment, judging by several of his remarks today, he is thinking about some kind of comeback in some degree in some public role. His success in that depends much on what the Congress now does to endorse and ratify in some formal way the contents of the impeachment charges, with accommodation for the evidence yet to come.
When a man becomes the nation's chief executive, even his most intimate friends, even his family, call him, in public at least, Mr. President. Well, 9-year-old Chris Ford of Grand Rapids, the new president's nephew, got the word today. But perhaps understandably, for a 9-year-old, he got it just a little bit garbled. Asked what he will call his uncle, Chris said, Mr. Uncle Jerry President. And that's the way it is. Friday, August 9th, 1974. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News, reporting from Washington. Good night.